Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's recorded Zoom in place of Facebook Live. I am Lucas Minton with Minton Wealth Strategies, and the other person we've got here is Debra Shannon. And we're going to start off a little different today. We're going to say, since this is pre-recorded, what the current situation with the indices are. The Dow Jones is currently down 43.59 points, or down 0.14%. The S&P 500 down 1.84 points, or negative 0.05%. And the NASDAQ is up 14.13 points, or 0.1%. So just kind of a mixed day. Now, for those of you who didn't see on Facebook, Debra with us today. She is part of the So You Want a Career in Finance series that we're doing. And we're going to now do the weekly reminder that I am a financial professional. We are financial professionals. And because of that, we're overseen by multiple governmental and non-governmental organizations. And because of that, we have a lot of disclosures, and they can be found at www.mws.solutions or Veritas Independent Partners.com. Is that right? .com, they can find all that? Okay. Mm-hmm. So first things first, Debra, I've got to, everybody out there wants to know, do I actually have to say that every week?
And the answer is yes. You do have to say that every week. We are required as registered professionals to disclose certain information to the public. And I have mixed feelings about that. I think the main reason for that is so that the public can go to your website or go to our website and look at the disclosures. On those disclosures, they will find links to regulatory agencies. There will be a link to Broker Check, which is a way to verify that you're a registered person, that I'm a registered person. I think the reason why I have mixed feelings about that is, one, people need to know that that's where they can go to verify that information. And how are they going to know that if you don't tell them? And my thought is, if I'm not a registered person or a professional and being deceptive, if you don't say, go look at these places to check me out, then no one knows to go look at those places and check you out. But the truth is, the more that we put that information out there to the public, the more they will become aware that there are disclosures, and there are regulatory agencies that oversee our activity. There are rules in place and policies and procedures in place to make sure that we do what we're supposed to, what's in the client's best interest.
Gotcha. Well, now let's go on to probably the thing that most people are going to ask: how in the world does someone end up in compliance? Because that sounds like this big, scary, crazy world. So how does someone kind of end up there?
Well, I'll be honest, I ended up here sort of by accident. So I was a nurse for 10 years, and I got a phone call from a friend that said she worked at a branch office similar to what your office is, and they needed an office manager. And I was looking to have a change in careers. And so I thought I would give it a shot. And within a year, I took the Series 7 exam, which is the license that allows you to buy and sell securities on behalf of the public. And then a year later, I took the Series 24, which is the supervisory license. And I never really set out, I never in my life said, I want to grow up and be a compliance professional, because compliance is all about rules and regulations. Mm-hmm. And although I enjoy that part of the business, it's not something that I'd necessarily set out to do. But I do like people, and what I do is I interact with people all day, every day. So once I got my Series 24, then I set out on a path of compliance. Understanding the rules and regulations of the industry, making sure those that I was in charge of supervising followed those rules and regulations. And that was probably 15 years ago that I started that. There's no school that you can go to learn to be a compliance officer for a securities firm. So a lot of things, it's a lot of self-taught. I've taken lots of classes that are sponsored by our regulators. I've gone to conferences. I read a lot about what other firms do to get in trouble and what other registered professionals, registered representatives and investment advisors do to get in trouble. I think that I've learned more from that than anything.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah, it is. And I tell reps all the time, because we have some rules in our industry that are frustrating. They tie our hands to some degree. And when I have to explain this to an advisor and they feel very frustrated about it, I say, someone out there in the industry broke a rule that caused this to be a rule for us to follow. And we have a very regulated industry, as anyone can imagine. You hear pretty frequently in the news where there's been a Ponzi scheme or there's been an advisor stealing from clients. And so this has to be a regulated industry.
So now you did all that, and you were down that path. And then at some point you said, I'm tired of dealing with everyone else. And then you and Gail went together and you founded Veritas, and then you're the chief compliance officer. Can you kind of talk to folks about what exactly that means, as far as kind of what your day looks like, as far as being the buck stops here as far as compliance goes?
Well, my day looks probably different than a chief compliance officer for a big firm, such as a Morgan Stanley or Edward Jones or something like that. Because being a small firm in Arkansas, we wear many hats, Gail and I. So just to back up a little bit to kind of address that, she and I had worked for several firms over several years, a period of time, and we kept not finding ourselves with a company that we felt shared our philosophy. And a lot of that philosophy was to take care of have this relationship with our financial advisors, where we work together to build something and not necessarily adversarial type relationship. And so that's when she and I founded Veritas Independent Partners. And it was a very tough journey. It took us a year from inception to approval from the regulators to even be able to open our doors. And so it's not an easy process. In fact, there's just a handful of broker-dealer advisory firms headquartered in Arkansas, and we're one of them. So we're really excited about that. And we started that journey in 2013. So we've been doing that quite a while. Now, as a small firm, like I said, we both wear many hats. And my day consists of relationships. I'm on the phone at least probably visiting with 5 or 6 different advisors throughout the day. It could be anything from how do I fill out this form to what's the rule and reg related to this situation that I'm thinking about doing or I'm wanting to do. Then I do tons and tons of reading. Like I said before, I'm always looking to see what other firms are doing to get in trouble so that I can make sure that our firm stays clean. And that's a really big deal. I've always told advisors that your company is as strong as your compliance department. So, it's really important to us to try our best to adhere to every policy that we can and to do it in a good way. And at the same time, respect our financial advisors like you, because you're a business owner and you're an independent contractor, but you still have to adhere to those policies and procedures, those regulations, which is where I come into play. So if you've got a question about, can I do this? Then you're going to give me a call. And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to start studying and pulling out the books and trying to figure out what the answer to that question is. So I would say most of my day is problem solving. Do lots of problem solving.
I can imagine. So now, as far as what compliance does, can you give somebody who might be interested, kind of like a 30,000 foot view of the different aspects of compliance? Of course, everybody knows they've heard the dreaded word audit before and the dreaded word complaint, but then there's also all this advertising and publication. Can you just kind of go through what that means to you and your position?
Yeah. So there's lots of avenues. And just like you said, every advertising piece that gets put out there, we have, our firm has about 35 advisors in 6 states. So And every state has some of their own specific rules. And then we're regulated also by the SEC and by FINRA. So we have lots and lots of rules to go by. But every advertising piece has to come across my desk. That includes anything from business cards to newspaper advertising to phone book advertising. And then I had one of my offices wanted to do a billboard advertising. So I have to go through and approve and make sure all the proper disclosures are on there. We have to be very careful about what we represent so that there's no misleading information or no implication that sets a expectation that's unrealistic or unattainable. So things like that are what I'm looking for in advertising. I would say that's probably my toughest hurdle, is wrapping my mind around advertising. There's suitability. That's a really big part of what I do. So every single application that comes into our firm, and there are thousands and thousands that come in every year, comes across my desk. And I have to make sure that if the client takes a risk tolerance test, say for instance, and their risk tolerance test shows that they are conservative, then I have to make sure that we follow up and ensure that those investments that come into the account after the account's open are conservative investments. They meet up the suitability. So, looking after the individual accounts is a big part of it too. I could just go on and on all day about just the different avenues, but I would say I spend a lot of time focusing on the client accounts, the transactions. One thing that we have to make sure is that the transactions that go through the firm every day, whether it's with our mutual funds or if it's with our custodian on our advisory wealth management side, are suitable. Also, and then we also have to have limitations on what we can and can't do. And that's one of the things that Gail and I sit down and we decide how far are we willing to step outside of, your traditional investments. And we've made some decisions that we won't accept certain types of investments into our clients' accounts, or will very limit the amount of those investments that can go into those accounts. And those are hard decisions, because clients will call up and they'll hear about a hot penny stock or some cryptocurrency or something out there that's considered speculative. And that's just not the kind of firm that we are. And so we have to make rules and regulations based on that. And then we've got to really review every transaction to make sure that those things aren't slipping kind of under the radar. So it's a pretty big job.
So about that, and I use the bad words first because everybody hears us talk about them, but can you talk about what an audit is for compliance and what a complaint is for compliance too?
So the firm goes through, there's several types of audits. Right now, we have this the first of every year. We have to go through a financial audit. It's called a PCAOB audit, and it's a certain type of audit. And Sarbanes-Oxley, when that act went into effect, it was really set up to prevent companies from cooking the books. And if you'll remember the Enron situation that happened, and so many people were adversely affected because of that. Well, these laws went into effect to try to prevent things like that from happening. Like I said earlier, you can almost trace every single rule back to somebody who did something they shouldn't have done. And so we have to go through this every year. It's very costly to the firm, but they really go in and they look at our financials. So that's one type of audit. Another type of audit or exam that we have could be the State Securities Department, it could be FINRA, or it could be the SEC. Those are our three main regulators. And when they come in, they're gonna set up shop in our conference room, and they're gonna go through our books tediously. They're gonna pull client records. They're gonna look at everything that they can think of. And they do this on a risk base. So if we were a company that were a high risk for money laundering activity, they would put a focus there. If we're a company that's got several complaints due to a specific type of investment product, then they're going to focus in that area. I've been through several FINRA audits. I've had one SEC audit, and I've seen the State Securities Department several times. So they do come in and they do look around, and they'll find, they find something. It's all thankful for us. It's always been little things, where we didn't file a paper in the right file or something like that. But they do come in, and it's a very detailed exam, And that's to protect the consumer. So we're always cooperative. We always learn something from them when they happen.
Well, you're talking about stuff getting filed in the wrong place. I remember it's been almost, boy, it's close to 10 years ago. I guess it was about 2012 or 2013. The state was in my office, and they had found that I had all of my social media, and they couldn't see where it was being monitored. So I had to go and I had to print up proof that I had a third party service that recorded everything and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another part of what you do too. And we didn't even hit on that, but as the social media like this is going to be posted on Facebook and everything, as social media gets bigger, seems to be like a bigger part of the business as we go along too.
It is, and a lot of firms have a stated policy that they don't allow their advisors to interact on social media as a professional. That's why you don't see just a ton of financial advisors out there. Now you'll see people like what's the guy's name that's always on MSNBC or whatever. He's always giving his recommendations.
Oh, Kramer.
Yeah. So if you go to BrokerCheck and look up Kramer, I believe you will find him, but he's not actively licensed. When you're not actively licensed, you can pretty much say whatever you want to say. You and me couldn't get away with the things that a lot of these guys are saying on TV. A lot of these commercials that come out and really encourage you to invest here or invest there. But social media, your activity, this video here, all these things get archived. They get reviewed ahead of time. We have to be very careful about the things that we say. Also, emails. Every single email that comes through our offices gets archived, and we have a review process also. I think when I looked the other day at our archiving system, we had like 4 or 5 million emails that have been archived to date. So it's a really big deal. And what we're looking for is just to make sure that the communication that's going between the financial advisor and the public falls within the rules and regulations of what they can and can't say. And I'm just proud to say that we've got a really group of financial advisors that make my job a lot easier. So thank goodness. But so everything really, when people ask about our industry and the regulation, and I tell them, you just wouldn't believe the regulation that we fall into. If you're a company that's doing what you should be doing, it's a hard business to be in, but it's a very rewarding business also. Well,
kind of circling back around on what you said earlier, the penny stocks, as well as people who are not licensed, especially with everything that's been going on with these crazy stocks the last couple of weeks, and then everything that happened since the crash last year, all these people deciding they were day traders and all this kind of stuff. You see all these videos out on YouTube and all these videos on Facebook and Twitter, and everybody, they always start off, they're like, this is not financial advice. And that's just, you say, I love to hear you say that, because then you just back up what I said, that is a big deal. Everybody thinks that's just some superfluous nonsense, but that's a big deal. Now, as far as you and your role goes, is there any difference that you say, okay, if I'm wearing the broker-dealer hat, this works this way, but if I'm wearing the RIA hat, it works this way? Is there any difference for you on kind of your job on the compliance side of things?
That's a really good question. And I'll back up a little bit and explain what that is, because like I said before, we're one of a few what they call combo firms, broker dealer and registered investment advisory firm wrapped into one. And there are several differences in those two different types of firms. Broker dealers are regulated by the SEC and by FINRA, and investment advisory firms are regulated by the SEC or the states. And of course, the state securities department has jurisdiction, for anyone that's registered within the state.
Anywhere they want to walk in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I would say there's a lot of detailed differences, but on the surface, the big picture, a lot of it has to do with the type of licensing each professional has underneath each of those entities. So a broker dealer, you can have a Series 7 or Series 6, and an advisory firm is a 66 or a 65. That's probably going into more detail than you really need to know. But a lot of it has to do with fiduciary responsibility.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, though, because a few weeks ago, I talked about all the licensing stuff and what the different things meant. And that's different sections of law. So once again, it's good to have you make it sound like I'm not making things up.
No, there are. And then another big difference between the two is how you pay your advisor. So on the broker dealer side, it's a transactional commission-based fee that you pay whenever you buy or sell an investment product there. And then on the advisory side, typically it's an asset management fee or a percentage of the assets held. There are other variations to that, but on the surface, that's probably most generally the difference between the two. And so there are differences in regulation because they are regulated by different entities. I would say there's a lot of crossover in the rules. And sometimes I feel like the advisory side can tend to be a little bit more lenient in some areas. But I think a lot of that is because you're expected to act as a fiduciary, which is acting in the client's best interest, or putting the client's best interests ahead of, or their interest ahead of your own interests. And so I think there's a lot of accountability when you're doing that. On the broker dealer side, it's a suitability standard. And so most of the advisors that are registered with Veritas, including you, operate on both sides of the business. And then that way you can evaluate which of these best suit your client's needs. So, but as far as rules go, there are differences, but there's so much crossover. What I tend to do is whatever is the most stringent related to a specific area, that just applies across the board. So if advertising is more stringent, the advertising rules are more stringent over here, I'm going to apply it over here too. It just makes it, one, it makes it a little bit easier to manage, but two, it keeps us out of trouble by doing that.
Well, and on a personal level, I've always tried to give everyone the investment advisory standard of care, to where everybody would know we're always sitting on the same side of the desk here, metaphorically, of course.
Yeah.
So, but now here's going to be one, and a lot of people are going to really want to know, why do they get all this mail? What is the purpose for all this mail? Can I not just make it go away? Can't you push a button and just make it all go away?
Well, one thing you can do is that you can opt in for electronic statements and confirmation so that you're not getting so much mail, paper mail, but we are still required to send out statements. We are still required to send out a transaction confirmation so that you're aware of what's going on in your account. And when you're setting up your account, there's tons of paperwork on the front end, and a lot of it, I would say half of the pages that you're going to encounter in your onboarding booklet are going to be disclosure that we're required to provide to you. There's nothing to do with it but keep it and read it and have it as your own. But yeah, there's no way to really get around that. It's just part of the business, and a lot of it's to protect the client. I have seen cases, not at my firm, where transactions were happening in a client's account and they weren't aware of it, and they were getting the confirmations in the mail, but they weren't opening. They didn't know that there was value in that, so they were just pitching it away. And at some point, they raised their head and started paying attention, and realized a lot was going on in their account that they had no idea, and they weren't approving those transactions, or they weren't happy with the transactions. So that's the whole point of getting all that in the mail, is to make sure that you're on top of and being notified of everything that's happening with your investments. And I've had people say, well, that's what the professionals do. I want them just to take care of that. I don't really want to know what's going on in my account. And the answer is that you can't do that. You have to be accountable for your money. This money is your money. And for most people that we work with, I would say, middle-class America, this is what's got to sustain you through your retirement. So you really need to understand and be aware of what's happening in those accounts. And don't stick your head in the dirt, or in the sand, don't stick your head in the sand, and just pay attention and understand and ask questions. If something's going on, you get something in the mail concerning your account, you don't know what that is, call your advisor. If your advisor doesn't give you the answer that you want, call the firm, which is what we are. And that's probably one thing that I think that we do really well is explain who we are and who you are and who the custodian is, because there are multiple entities that are involved in the account process. And we send out a letter when a client opens an account with one of our financial advisors, and we explain who the broker dealer is and what role we play, who the advisor is and what role they play, which would be you, Lucas, and then also the custodian, which is where the assets are held. Now, there are some companies that all three of those are the same entity. We aren't that. We do not hold the client's assets. When the checks are made out, they're made out to, whatever company that the accounts are going to be opened at, and not to us directly and not to you directly. And I think that's valuable. There's multiple entities that are, involved in that.
Well, just for the folks who are watching this will know they're not alone. I think everybody knows I was down for a while because of the Rona, but I checked my login screen once about a week ago, and then I checked it again today, and I had something like 69 alerts. So as much mail as they think they get, we get a lot more. We get so much more.
Yeah, you're right. And I would say, multiply that times about 25, and that's what I get.
Right. I
So
can imagine.
Just know that, that's what my job is, to kind of pay attention on the backside and to what's going on in the accounts.
So this next one's going to tie in with the question after it. Everybody always wants to know, why does Lucas always have one more form? And what is he? Is he got the Columbo of finance? It's just like, oh, just one more form, just one more form. So why is it always there's another form? And it always gets pawned off on compliance. It does. So we're not going to pretend it doesn't. But it's like, Mr. Smith over here has decided that this big position that he inherited from his parents, he's going to write options. Well, that's a form. Or we want to hook it up to their bank over here, and that's a form. Why people always ask me, why is there always another form? Why can't you just do it?
Well, I would say that there's no one size fits all account, which is to the client's benefit. So if it's for your example, options, if someone wants to trade options, we need to make sure the client fully understands the risks that are involved with options, and what options are, and we need to make sure they get permission for us to trade that type of security in their account. When it comes to 401k rollovers, there's extra documents for that. So you've got an IRA, and you've established your IRA, and you've been rocking along with that for 5 years, and now you're retiring, and now you want to roll over your 401k from your employer into your IRA. Well, there's disclosure that's involved with that. So this is something new that we need to make sure that the client is aware of all their options. What's going to happen when this money moves over? Does the status of this money change? There's a lot of disclosure that's involved with that. So I would say every step that a client takes that deviates from the initial step is going to require disclosure. 9 times out of 10, that's most of what the client's going to be receiving from us is disclosure of the risk. And we just want to make sure clients understand. People think they don't really want to know until there's a problem. And then that's when they're like, oh, I didn't know that. If I had known that, or I wish I had known that. And I think all this disclosure, even though it's obnoxious and some people don't want to read it, I think it's necessary.
You said it, not me.
And I agree. I mean, I get it all the time. Even my parents, they're like, I got this in the mail, and I'm like, well, let's look at it, and I can't think of, well, there are lots of things that are very important in your life, but your money and what's supposed to sustain you through your retirement is super important. And being on top of that and understanding all the aspects of that is so valuable. I think it's worth taking the time to understand all of that disclosure and all that obnoxious paper that comes to you.
Well, and I read a couple of years ago that baby boomers specifically, it said your retirement is most likely your largest asset. It's probably larger than your house. Not always, but a lot of times that because they don't have pensions anymore. So everybody's putting their money in their 401k or their IRA. So it's just so important to make sure people know what they have, why they have it. So on that, like I said, so the next question that everybody, they're like, well, it's my money. Why can't I just buy whatever I want in that account? Why can't I do that? Why can't I, I have a retirement account and I want to margin it. Why can't I do that? Well, Mrs. Client, you got to go take that one up with those people in that big white building up in DC. That has nothing to do with me. But let me know when you take care of that. But there's a lot of times people say, well, why can't I buy that penny stock? Or why can't I short that stock? Can you just kind of go over kind of you and Gail specifically, I guess this would be why y'all came to the decision of what is appropriate and what's not appropriate, especially when we are acting as fiduciaries.
Yeah, so we do have a list of things that we don't allow, to be purchased in our clients' accounts, but it's for the protection of the client. And a lot of it's because we've followed, the process historically of those type of things. And it's hard for me to really get into that without getting specific about any specific
single security, sure.
Yeah, but compliance would get me for that if I tried to do that. But
I hear she's tough.
I'm trying to think of the best way to explain that. But there are lots of investments out there that are just not suitable for the everyday investor. They're just too speculative, too aggressive, too risky. And on the front end, and aside from that, the amount of due diligence that would be required for us to feel comfortable to allow our clients to participate in those type of investments, we're just not even capable of doing. It would take an entire team of lawyers to really dig into those investments to give us the security or feeling of security that we would have to have. And so we've just made decisions as a company to limit those type of investments. Now, we're not talking about just going out and buying your blue chip stock or whatever. That's not what you and I are talking about. We're talking about these crazy things that
triple
are
leverage.
created.
We'll use that one, for instance, because you see that in stuff everywhere. Triple leverage, this, that, or another.
Well, and I can give an example of that. I just read an article where an advisor really got into some trouble because he was using leveraged ETFs in client portfolios. And with those type of products, the way that they're built, for one thing, they're designed to for the most part, to day trade. They're not made for buy hold strategies. And
you can say gamble, I think. I don't think compliance will get mad if you say gamble.
Well, you said it. But the way that they're built is if the market goes up 1%, these go down, these go up 2%. They double, they go up more than the market, and they double down the opposite direction. So if they go down 1%, they might go down 2%. They can even do multiples of that. So you could see how someone could get in some really, if they're not understanding those products, they could get in some hot water really quick. And this advisor was using those products without the client's permissions or knowledge, and he was using them in a way that harmed the client's account and got in some hot water for that. So we have very strict limitations on products like that. And it's mostly because they're very difficult to understand. They don't always get used in the way that they are intended, the way they were designed and intended. So when a client's like, well, why can't I? Well, that's why, a lot of things we put into place just to protect the client. I don't know if that's the best answer, but
I mean, that's about as good an answer as there is. And a great example is on that. My buddy, he had one of those prospectuses. This has been a couple of years back that he got a hold of, and it actually said in the prospectus that the investment is not designed for a long-term hold because of all the derivatives and all this kind of stuff in it. And now after 2008, I feel like a lot of people, they hear that word derivative and it actually gives them pause now, where maybe before 2008 it didn't. But yeah, that's a good one. And like I said, that people not understanding, and I've had this one, and you could tell me if this is about the best way to put it. I have actually in the past had some people be really interested in buying real estate with their IRA or with their brokerage account, and having the custodian hold that. And I said, really? I said, that's a whole other ball of wax. And that's one of those things that you really need to go to a purpose-built firm to do. And when they asked me why, I don't want to say I doubled down on it. Was sorry about that, everybody. Had a phone call come in right as we were trying to do this. So anyway, I had told these folks that they wanted to go to a purpose-built firm for that real estate purchase, and on some level, I said, I understand where you're coming from, but one thing I told these folks is, because that is such a niche thing, there are very high fees associated with it. And that's something that you'll really need to talk to them and do that. But I have had that question. Is that probably the best way you could tell folks to, if they're interested in that kind of stuff, is just find a purpose-built firm and be ready to pay whatever it costs?
Well,
for whatever
so.
kind of crazy strategies.
I think you want the person that's working with you in your investments to be very familiar and understand what they're investing in. And I think it's very valid. It's a very valid thing for an advisor to say, you're asking for something that's outside my scope of knowledge, or my, what I know and what I do. And I think referring someone, that happens all the time. I have advisors call me all the time and say, my client called me up and they want to buy this, that, or the other. And that advisor doesn't feel comfortable with it. We don't feel comfortable with it. So I think referring a client on to a place that they can go where somebody does feel comfortable with it is very valid. But for the most part, if we're not okay with that, it's because it's not the type of investment that our clients typically want to participate in.
That's a good way to put it. Well, like I always seem to say, and maybe not every video, but it feels like a lot of them. A lot of this comes back to that risk tolerance questionnaire and how important it is for people to be honest when they're filling that out. Yeah. And back on Wise Lucas always had me with another form. If you tell me that you're ultra conservative, but all you want to buy are single stocks, well, I'm going to make you sign a form for that, because what you're telling me you are and the way you're acting are two different things.
Right.
And we've all seen that kind of stuff.
Well, and I see that too, where a client will test out as moderately conservative, but then they'll be a little more aggressive with their account that they open with a financial advisor. And it's because maybe their 401k is extremely conservative. And so they can be a little bit more aggressive with the account they open with the advisor, because when you look at the overall picture, it averages out to a moderately conservative portfolio. So there are times whenever a client may come in and want to step outside their risk tolerance with their account. But that's when I come in and I ask the question, why are we doing this? And on our forms, we do have a section where the client can list out their assets that are not investable assets that are not held with our company. And that paints a picture for me, just like I just described. If we've got a moderately aggressive portfolio and the risk tolerance is conservative or moderately conservative, I can go look at that section and go, oh, well, they've got 2/3 of their investable assets at a 401k that's invested very conservative, or maybe even in a bank and a CD. So that's why we ask all these questions. It helps paint a picture. And there's so many rules now that says we really have to understand the client's total financial situation. And sometimes clients aren't comfortable sharing all that with us, but I think it's just to protect the client. That's the reason why.
Excellent. Well, I need to thank you again for the time, and I'm sure you've got more fun things to do than do this, so I greatly appreciate it. For all of you out there who are watching, if you have compliance questions, there's the person to ask right there. And I will get them to her. But as always, I hope you found everybody watching that this has been practical and useful information. And those of you who are considering a career in finance, possibly this is your career path. But anyway, feel free to like and follow for any future videos. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out through the website, www.mws.solutions. What's your email at the what's your email at the Veritas? Is it just Debra at Veritas Mail?
Debra at veritasmail.com. DEBRA at Veritas, VERITAS mail.com.
Okay, so if you got any questions compliance wise, whether I've done it or someone else, there's the person to ask. But again, thank you everybody for sitting in with us on this this cold and icy day, and I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.
Thanks. Bye, Lucas.
Bye.